There are a number of changes that I would make to the Irish taxation system. I think, like a lot of taxation systems around the world, the Irish system is guilty of trying to create incentives and disincentives to shape personal behaviour. With regard to certain elements of VAT, there are 4 levels of VAT, being 0%, 9%, 13.5% and 23%. I would object to the government trying to say we want to raise money in this area because, well, for any reason, as opposed to another area. A lot of times the excuse made is that the 23% VAT rate is attached to goods that are not Irish, or goods that don't employ a lot of people, but it creates a perverse incentives to change spending patterns, which affects optimal utility. There exists a very high marginal rate of tax, in particular in 2 areas. The first would be people on social welfare who, if they were to enter the workforce, would be quite low earners. This high rate of marginal tax is not necessarily a tax in itself, but a disincentive created by the high level of social welfare that they are on and the fact that they would lose their benefits. If you take someone who's going to have their couple €100 a week and would only get an extra €50 a week for working 40 hours, it's a massive disincentive to continue going on there. So I would find a way of getting rid of that massive disincentive to work to enter the workforce, and I'll touch on that in a second. The other high marginal tax rate is the actual high marginal tax rate, and that's for people who are relatively modest income earners and above. If you were, and I think it's €32,800, you pay a marginal tax rate, an income tax of 41%, and then there is universal social charge as well as PRSI. This in effect is the government saying if someone wants to work an extra hour, we're going to take 31 minutes of your time for the sake of it. So I think this is a massive disincentive. If you look at countries around us, the higher rate of marginal tax does not set in until a much higher earning. You know, in the UK, it's over £100,000. In might be, I'm not entirely sure. It might be up above that. Certainly in Germany and France, the same exists. A way of addressing this would be something similar to Milton Friedman's negative income tax, whereby everyone receives a refundable tax credit, and then they pay a flat rate of income tax on everything they above that, and it changes these kind of bumps or disincentives to a constant level, and it doesn't discriminate against people who might earn the same but work different hours. So if you imagine someone who is earning, say, €20 a week or an hour, and they work however many hours so that they don't pay the higher rate of tax, and another person who earns €20 an hour and does work the necessary amount of hours to pay above the standard rate of tax and into the higher rate of tax, the government is then kind of stating that we don't want you to work more, whereas a flat rate, I believe, would be the most efficient way to go about it. The high level of tax, in particular of excise on the likes of tobacco and alcohol, create massive black markets, and I believe that the only justifiable excise is an estimated damage to the community. So, for example, the only excise that should exist on tobacco is the estimated cost of providing healthcare to the people who are affected by tobacco smoking but don't smoke cigarettes themselves. Yeah.